Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Occult Explorers. I'm your hostess, Snappy, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dion. How's it going, Dion?
Glad to be here right before the 4th of July holiday. We're
Right?
getting ready to blow up a bunch of stuff. They've already been up all night blowing up things,
Oh, man.
fireworks.
That's awful. Like, I live right on the border. So I live on the St. Mary's River, okay? And I can see the U.S. from my house. And since Canada Day on the 1st, it's been nonstop fireworks every night. It's starting to get to me. And I still got at least one more day of this.
Oh, your freedom celebrations are about the same time, huh?
Yep. Yeah, we celebrated on the 1st and then you guys on the 4th. So usually winds up following.
How's that time up?
I don't know.
Revolutions.
Right? Except ours wasn't so much a revolution as it was some exchanging of documents, and we'll still keep you on our money, Queen. Like,
yeah,
ridiculous shit, But this is going to be a fun episode. I'm excited for this one. We're going to be digging into some Slavic magic and Slavic paganism, and this was inspired because of, this ongoing Russian crazy situation that we've been seeing, right? So, as always, we want to give a little bit of a trigger warning for this one. We are going to be getting into some weirdness. So, with that being said, where do you want to take us, Dion?
Well, we're Slavic. East, west, south, from Germany to Scythians, up to almost Siberia, down to Bulgaria, all over. Once I looked it up, I was like, oh, there's a little more to the Slavic history than I thought. And it's, let's say it's not so much a DNA as it could be. It's more of a language and a culture and a mythology that unites people, because at the farthest tips there is some genetic differences as well as similarities, but it's you'll see this in different cultures around the world where it's the language that unites people,
right? And the Slavic people are super interesting because they kind of come out of the Indo-Aryan tribes, and then they kind of conquer most of the what they call the European plains, which make up Poland and a lot of Russia to this day. But there's also a lot, like you said, they go all the way up north to Finland and they connect with the Finnish people. And we can trace this linguistically. That word Suomi is actually a Slavic word, So it gets really interesting. And then when you go into the south, into the Balkans, there's another weird admixture where they're mixing with the Greeks and they're mixing with the Magyars. And you get a whole other thing going on. So the Slavs are so essential to this region of the world, and they get downplayed unfairly.
For a lot of reasons, politically. And that's what I figured out when I was looking this up, is that the thorn in the side is Soviet USSR, Hitler. A lot of this stuff taints Slavic history.
Right.
And they're taking it back, though. They are taking it back. There's
another thing that's
music I listen to. There's movements. There's lots of stuff. That's why we thought it was time to do this, because of the Russian-Ukraine thing. Because I'm for people. Yeah. And I'm for Ukraine to have autonomy. But I also understand there's an older history there. That Russia has an older history too. That's not Soviet. That's not about dictators and communism. That's about just ancient tribes.
Right. Now, this area of the world is so interesting because, it is that combination of West meets East. The horse peoples meets the Europeans, and you get this really interesting admixture going on. And like you said, what's really interesting about this region too is that we've seen this extreme revival here, and a lot of places in Europe, right? The Christianization process was extraordinarily thorough. People's religions were wiped out, their cultures completely assimilated. Not so much so in the Slavic areas. When I was looking into this, the anthropologists were saying that there were pagan holdouts up to the 1800s. And then there's a lot of speculation about it surviving underground within familial traditions, even, but I mean, openly practiced until the 1800s. Nowhere else in Europe do we see this, you know?
Love it. Love it. So let's hit our first. So, you know, if you see a lot of our videos, we target, or what we're looking for is the ancient goddess. And where do we find the ancient goddess in all these different cultures and religions and mythologies and mystery cults? Because that's what seems to unite us.
Yeah.
Is the universal mother figure. Mokosha. Obviously, you know, I don't know how to say anything. I can barely speak English. But what I know, I looked it up. It said the moist mother. She's very moisty.
Right, the moist mother. She's the patron of all women, the divine feminine. Right, she has this idea of being this cosmic womb, and I also like, to me, it connects to that Greek tradition, because we always see a lot of these goddesses described with the water, with the moisture, like Aphrodite. Right, and there's this thing about these nymphs of the water and how the moisture drives you down into the land. It's really interesting, you know. So.
Oh yeah, and you know another thing about her, serpents,
right,
are attached to her. You'll notice, you'll see in a lot of these episodes we do, there's a pole, a stake, a linga, a maypole, a sundial, a tree, and no matter how you call it, a mast for a ship, you know, a crucifix, no matter what you call this stake, it's the tree that they worship, the primordial tree. And here in Slavic cultures, you would see the totem culture. You'll see this in Hawaii, Native America, all over the world as the universal totem culture of not only worshiping the tree itself, but then carving the tree into gods or ancestors.
Yeah. Or poles into tripods, into altars. We see this all over, but it's really important that we emphasize this. Like, I like to talk a lot about near universals. You know, we mentioned earlier the mother goddess, this Venus figure, the snake mother who's associated with water. That's a near universal, meaning many of the global cultures have an analogous figure to this. Another universal that we're going to see, it's just in like how these people are approaching the trees. You know, trees are always seen almost as godlike figures, almost always associated with the feminine, and almost always worshipped. And oftentimes you see them as a focus of sacrifice, where the tree is cut down. And the tree, like, it's really interesting is that when we read a lot of these myths about virgin sacrifice and sacrificing these women figures or these Attis type figures, sometimes it's not a person, sometimes it's a tree. But you got to understand, in the pagan conception, the tree is alive. The tree is our ancestor. So it is a human sacrifice, which is why they're using the same language. You know, it's so interesting.
The sacred grove.
Right?
Animated, come alive, 3D. Let's hit the next picture.
And that takes us right back to our first episode, the sacred grove.
Oh yeah, right? We can't escape the mother in the grove. It's where we're all born. You know, the Garden of Eden. Look at, we got, this is part of Slavic totem culture, but you see on the right, another thing that they find up and down these regions is mushroom stones.
Wow.
Stones tilted, stacked, and shaped to look like mushrooms. And we know a lot. And mushrooms are associated with Makosh and a lot of the Slavic paganism. Throughout this whole area, this is we always talk about the Amanita. You know, finally, we're here at the motherland. Not just Siberia, but it's right here. This is the spot. This is where they like these mushrooms. You know, they set up altars to these mushrooms, and they're carved into the poles and different things. You know, let's hit the next picture.
And we know, too, with these mushrooms that they are, you know, in Siberia, they're taking them and they're ingesting them with their reindeer and with the shamans. And then, and they're having their people ingest the urine. And we know that the Scythians are doing similar things with their horses, you know. So did you see anything like that with the Slavs, Dion?
Well, that they're connected to the culture.
Of course.
Now, the reason why, biotransformation, animals and humans have a capacity to take plants and different substances and render them into a psychoactive or bioavailability, you know. So what'll happen is the first person will take the mushroom, which is kind of toxic, and will urinate. Now that urine will now have the alkaloid psychoactive element bioavailable. And in this case, it's muscarol, which is for Amanita muscaria, which is prevalent in this region with a whole host of others that they're taking. They love mushrooms.
Right. It's not just
because here's why. We know when it's very moisty in the dirt, the fungus grows.
Yeah.
It deals with moistness and thunders, you know. And even when I came across one of the other thunder gods, because we talk about the different thunders as a Perun. Yeah, and he was the patron god of Kievan Rus. You know, because obviously Kiev was the capital of Russia for thousands of years, no problem. But the people there now are what's the word? Autonomy. So who gives a fuck? They're autonomous now. There's millions of people. They speak a different language. Deal with it. But the history is special. That was a special part of Russia. Yeah. Honor it. Can we honor both of those? How do we do that?
This is something that I always find really interesting when we're talking about tradition, because, you know, I am not, like, on one hand, I consider myself a pagan, but I don't follow any tradition of any kind. I do worship traditional gods, but I worship them in the present, in my own way, in my own conception. And I do look to the past, but I seek to bring the past into the present. What I take from the past is those images, you know, that those divine myths, those things that are greater, that exist beyond. And I think, like, we can still do this, right? We can look to these pasts and we can talk about them. The problem becomes when we talk about, like, recreating them exactly in the present, you know, like, there's too much of this toxic nostalgia, you know, where it's like, yeah, let's celebrate the past. Let's celebrate our shared connections, but let's also be mindful of where we are, you know, and who we are today. We have to take this into the now, right?
That's why I'm both pro-Palestinian and I'm pro-Jewish. Got to have a homeland. And Palestinians got to have a homeland. Everyone's got to have a homeland. Ukrainians, Rus, everybody get a homeland. You know, that's what this is all about. We're exploring what the homeland of the earth is. It's special. Right. That's what the mother country and the father country and where we come from is special. That's what this is all about. All these episodes exploring where we come from.
Yeah, exploring the goddess, right? And this is something I want to highlight. We need to stop putting boundaries up between us. We all live on the same earth. We all are connected to the same mother. We all share this planet together. Nothing that happens anywhere on this planet doesn't not affect the other parts of the planet. You know, we are all interconnected and we all need to work together in this, you know, and understand this. It's like you can have a connection to your local land, to your local traditions, to your local stuff, right? But you also have to be able to see that greater connection. We have to become this idea of the super organism, you know, like I really absolutely love this author, Isaac Asimov. You know, we're going to get a little weird here, but Isaac Asimov wrote a book series called The Foundation. But the cool thing about Asimov is he was a classicist. He was deeply influenced by the Greeks, and he understood a lot was going on with Greeks. And his story about the Foundation was actually inspired by the story of the Greeks in Athens, because the story goes, if you read the Hymn to the Mother of the Gods by Julian, is that the Athenians started to persecute the most vulnerable. They started to persecute the priestesses of the goddess Cybele, those who were practicing the rites of the mother. And this, Julian believes, is what ended the Greek Empire. But the Athenians got a ruling from the Oracle of Delphi, who told them that if they built the museum, the temple to the Muses, and collected their shared history, that part of them would survive, that they would be able to transform and come out of this calamity. Even though their empire wouldn't be the same, they wouldn't lose everything. They could be reborn and transformed. And what we see with Asimov is the same kind of story, right? In Foundation, it's all about creating a museum, collecting all of our shared ideas together in order to survive calamity. But where it gets even more wild with Asimov is if you go to the end of his series of Foundation, the final evolution of humanity is to become Galaxia, right? An organism that is made up of the entirety of the galaxy. But humans are all part of this. We're all one single being, but also individuals and separate. And that's where I think we need to get to, you know? Like, brilliant stuff to me. And I see reflections of this in a lot of pagan thought, you know?
Well, you know, as you were saying that, and I was looking at the image on the screen, I thought of mycelium.
Right.
That we're mycelium. That's the problem. We need to get back to our mycelial structure where we're all interconnected and interdependent on each other.
Yeah.
So we're more abundant and thriving, you know?
We're connected.
Yeah, interconnected. It's a connect, you know, and so we had to give a trigger warning. You did give the trigger warning about politics and drinking urines and psychedelics and ancient Christianity and all that. Because let's go to the next picture.
Right.
Reindeers. Love it. Love it. Big part of the culture. When we are studying Slavic history, they figure in the mythos heavily. And the colors, you'll notice those red and white colors, which is those mushrooms we keep talking about, which is a big part of their colors, of their accoutrements, red and white. We'll see this. And if that was in the Middle East, we would posit that that could be semen and blood, or Kermes, or Syrian Rus, or different psychoactives. But in this case, it could be a fungus that's red and white. And the reindeers like to eat those little fungi.
This is the thing, right? They talk about the reindeers with the nose for it, the special nose. And they'll go out and they'll find these Amanita muscaria, the red and white mushrooms. Now, I know you got to get into the Santa stuff, Dion. I want you to tell it.
Well, you know,
we're going to get wild.
I was going to get into Santa later, but people look at the Santa mythos, and what do we see right here? I mean, that almost looks like Santa, but that's not. If you were to zoom out, that's not Santa. That's just some Slavic culture. That's their traditional outfits that they wear. And around December 24th to the 26th, they are doing rituals. They have winter rituals with reindeer and with rebirth, and it's so close. There's so much to unpack there. We might have to come back with the whole episode just on that.
Right.
You know, the connection with Saint Nick, Santa Claus.
There's so much going on, and we know like the Christian celebration of Christmas is not just taking from one culture, it's taking from many. But I want people to fixate on these images because it's clear that these images are being incorporated. The red and white suits, the magic reindeer with red noses. Why do they have red noses? Because they can smell out Amanita muscaria mushrooms. What happens when you take Amanita muscaria? They're always described as flying, as being able to astral project. Now, these are reindeer who are eating these mushrooms, and then they're depicted as what? Flying. And also, a lot of these cultures, especially the ones further north, they would be making a special type of like igloo where the only entrance is through the top, you know, and because that's also where your fire is. So this imagery of people climbing into people's houses through the chimney in order to give them gifts, this is just a shaman who's being a real nice, kind guy who got really stoned on mushrooms and decided to go do some good for his local community.
And you know what? You know what the gift that they offer is a urine.
Right.
Urine. That's a custom in Siberian mythos. Is all right. Here's how it works. You came in out of the cold. We've heard that Eskimos get naked and cuddle.
Yeah.
These are all just famous stuff we hear as kids, you know. And so they get naked and they get under the covers. So the head shaman who has ingested the mushroom, the first pass is toxic, but when he urinates, it's now bioavailable. And they say that as you keep doing it, it becomes more active,
Wow.
become stronger. And you would offer that to somebody for a multitude of reasons. It's cold. It's a warm beverage. It gets you high. You're going to trip out. They had sex with my wife's here. We hear that's the Eskimo thing, is you offer your wife. This is a different type of culture where you live in the snow. And whatever heat you got, you're dependent on fire and heat. And they were tripping balls on this stuff. You know, right. This is evident, definitely. Let's hit the next pick.
Right. No, it's so wild with a lot of that imagery.
So it wasn't just reindeer, horses.
Right.
We talk about horses in a lot of the episodes, where there's the horse's hoof, the ergot, threshing on top of the claviceps purpurea. You can get like a LSA, St. Anthony's fire, and horses get ergotism.
Also the snake venom, remember? We were looking at processing the venom through, again, using the horse to create a bioavailable drug through that digestion, through that processing.
And one thing was that, they would slowly inoculate the horse with snake venoms, and 18 months later, take the blood from it and ingest that, building an immunity to the snake venom. Another one is here. You can see what he's doing. He's milking the mare, because pregnant mare urine is estrogenic, which we've talked about, and is used primarily across the world by millions of people on a daily basis.
Oh, yeah.
So the horse had multiple things, multiple processing, as well as being their dependents to go to war. Their archery. You know, they were nomadic. Part of the Slavic thing is that some of them were very nomadic.
Mm-hmm.
They move around and fight. You know, it's not until later that they settle down.
Yeah, right. These are ancient nomadic peoples, right? And like we said, the Slavs, they're spanning across that great European plain. They go all the way to Finland and then all the way to Bulgaria, you know?
So let's hit the next picture. And I really want to illustrate that. And this is called kumis. And this is a fermented horse milk, right, which is very popular amongst Slavic culture, Russia, and it gets you high. It's a part of it is that the mare's milk or the horse's milk has a lot of sugars, so it ferments easy, gets alcoholic easy. It's a fast turnaround time, and they would spice it. Not only can you ferment it with things and then ferment that to break down the psychoactive elements in your plant materials, you can also feed it to the horse. And the horse's digestive tract will break it down for you and put it into the milk.
Right.
And these are called spiced or medicated milks, which the Slavic warriors are famous for this. It could be a Fedra in there. You don't know. They could be taking this going into battle.
Right. And we do know that, like, the Scythians were notorious for using marijuana and cannabis. And we know that if you go to India, they're still drinking milks infused with cannabis called bang, you know, and we see similar practices throughout all these different horse cultures. So I would not be surprised. And then, like you said, the ephedra, right? We know, like, the Slavic peoples are really connected to a lot of these Aryan peoples, right? Like, they are this horse kind of culture. There is this direct connection. There's so much overlap with the Aryan or the Iranian ideas. And the Iranians, they're doing ephedra-based milks, the Heoma, right? Which later then becomes the Indian Soma. So yeah, there's a wide tradition of this spanning across this area.
Along with mandrake, henbane, the nightshades, opium poppies. You said cannabis, fermented honeys as well. Because Trabzon is right there in the Slavic region at the bottom of the Black Sea, where they were getting that fermented rhododendron honey.
Right.
Like a lot of they got access to a lot of hallucinogens and psychoactive plants, 100%. So let's hit the next picture, because we're talking about the mushrooms. So here's some red and white, and here's this old witch lady with the mushroom cap there. and she's famous.
Oh, is this our Baba Yaga?
Baba Yaga. You might have heard it in the John Wick movie. Even that's John Wick's nickname.
Wow. I've never seen those movies, but
Yeah. That's what came up when I was doing a lot of research on Baba Yaga. I was like, oh, John Wick came up.
Weird.
And Baba Yaga is famous, a famous witch in Slavic culture that had mushroom potions. And sometimes you might see her in a barrel with chicken legs, or with traditional witch stuff like the flying ointments with the broom.
Yeah.
And so the colors of red and white. And Baba means like grandmother, matriarch. It's the maternal. And so there's lots of folklore of Baba Yaga spanning Russia, to the different Eastern Europe, different Slavic mythology. Baba Yaga is very famous. There's you could type in that and watch hour-long videos just on Baba Yaga.
Right. Well, it's because it becomes so popular within modern popular culture. You see her everywhere, I wouldn't be surprised if she's a comic book character in the Marvel universe, and I'm just not aware.
Right. And here I wanted to illustrate is the connection to rocks, stones, and mushrooms. That's where a lot of the ancient connection comes with, and herbs as well, and poisoning. A multitude of herbs. It wasn't just the mushrooms, and it was putting the mushrooms into fermented milks as part of the formula. So let's hit the next picture.
Interesting.
Since we're talking about Babas, here's Baba Banga.
Oh,
Vangelia. All right, so we're going to get into some prophecies. Because that's part of the Slavic stuff, modern times. Putin likes the lady, hyped her up. She's like a folk hero. She's a Bulgarian mystic. And it was maybe she was born in 1911. And around the age of 12, she was kidnapped by a tornado, blown up into the sky. And when she came down, her eyes were filled with sand and she was blind. But after that, she had visions, so much so that she'd been studied by Soviet scientists, different scientists from around the world. And her visions some of them are about Russia.
What did she see? Like, what did she foretell?
Well, people say that she talks about the World Trade Centers and nuclear bombs and gets into Russian stuff. I'm not going to go deep into it. I just want to illustrate some of these folk hero babas, magic mothers, matriarchal mothers that are in Slavic history that are part of folklore.
And it's still going on, right?
Still going on. This is we went from Baba Yaga to Baba Vanga.
Kind of wild that she got the ear of Putin, Think about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, they tried to make it a folk thing. Oh, well, check that out. So from there, because we're talking about these Russian prophecies, there's another one that they say came true. It's the third prophecy of Fatima. So Fatima is a village in Portugal, which in 1917, on October 13th, was the final vision. There was a series of visions, Marian apparitions. Lucia and her two cousins would get visited. And so much so the church would come out until the Pope canonized them years later. And
oh, wow.
And part of the last vision on October 13th, 1917, was about Russia. And accepting Christ and evangelical prophecies. And this is underground stuff in the churches, but some people know about it. So much so that they founded something called the Blue Army, which is the Order of Fatima. And that's a Catholic organization, which is dedicated to the prophecies and Fatima, Saint Fatima, which is Marian, because we talked about Marian cults, which worship the Virgin Mary, and there's different Marian apparitions that have happened.
Right.
Black stones and black Madonnas, and this interconnects with that, and with Russia, because that was the last vision that the Virgin Mary told Lucia was, hey, Russia needs to get soft and get cool and get respectful with the planet, and we could all be cool.
That's so interesting. So what do the Orthodox Christians think of Fatima? Do you know?
They was venerated her, turned her into a saint, and so now it's what's Lucia is her name. Fatima is the village in Portugal.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a whole Catholic order around it, and they believe that the prophecy came true with when the Pope went to with certain dealings with the Pope in Russia, because they got their own Pope too with the Orthodox Pope. That's Kirill, which we'll talk about a little later too.
There's been several attempts over the years to try and end to like rejoin the churches.
Yeah, that's part of the prophecy thing.
Yeah.
And even so much when this happened, millions of people came out. You can Google it. You can see the pictures. It was called The Miracle of the Sun, 1917, October 13th. And because the Virgin Mary told them when it was going to happen, and they published it in the local newspapers in Portugal. And so millions of people came out, or thousands of people on that day. And so what happened was the sun started dancing in the sky. And there's multiple accounts of that. If you look at the newspapers and all the different history about it, it's called The Miracle of the Sun. And that's what and then the sun told, or Mary told Lucia, like, hey, you got to tell Russia to chill out. And so that's why we're bringing this back to remind Putin. Nobody forgot nothing. Chill out. Let's hit the next picture.
Interesting. Oh, let's go. There we go.
So here's a cool city inside. It's called Sergev Posad, dedicated to Saint Sergius, as well as the oldest Orthodox city fort in Russia. Saint Sergius is the patron saint of Russia, but I bring it up because of the toy making factory.
Toy making?
Oh yeah, ancient history of toy making. This reminds me of like Willy Wonka movies I used to watch as a kid, and Pippi Longstocking and stuff like that. Oh yeah, and it's this old city, Orthodox capital. In toy making factories are there, and they used to make these toys. One was called Matrushka, Babushkas and Matrushka. Let's hit the next picture because people might recognize these, the nesting dolls.
Yeah.
Hey, well, there's another prophecy with the nesting dolls as well.
Oh?
Yeah, yeah, of course. These are all prophecies. Everything is pretty much about prophecy.
See,
just to remind somebody.
My grandmother had like 10,000 of these things, and I never even thought twice about them.
Oh, there's different ones. There's different. It was the Sergei Malyutin who invented.
Usually it's like the Virgin Mary and Jesus on it and stuff,
Yeah, well, when the Tsar had it for his kids, and they invented them. They were wooden toys, and they'll say they're invented in 1800s. They go way back. This is. Some people will trace it back to Japan, they say, with the, what they call the Hoshku dolls. But let's hit the next picture. Because there's Babushkas, which are the mothers. Because we talked about the Babas. Mm-hmm. There's Baba Yaga, Baba Banga, Babushka, the grandmothers. And then Matrushkas, the wooden ones, they fit inside each other. And they have, let's say the iconography has a story to tell. If someone knew how to read it, and who the characters are, because as they would take them out, you would notice, okay, it had the Virgin Mother, then Jesus, and then John the Baptist, and then who baptized, and so there's an interconnection in the amount of the dolls. How many dolls is there? Specific amounts of dolls, numbers, and the characters on the dolls as well. And then is there something in the smallest dolls that a seed? It's called the seed doll. With the babushka, the baba being the biggest doll, the mother. But there is occult references to this stuff. If one just knows how to look.
Oh, interesting.
And there was a prophecy that came out about them. That deal with dates and times. Like say adding up certain babushkas as months and then other ones as days, and then the images on them telling a story.
Cool.
This is where we're going Slavic. This is the shit I'm into. Some old weird shit.
Right.
I like these little dolls.
Oh no, they're awesome. I just, I never thought of them as anything other than dolls. So it's
Oh
yeah,
no, it's all occulted stuff.
right.
And even the temples, the way they were shaped, this architecture, and the word czar compared
Yeah.
to Kaiser, Caesar. So the words, the etymology, it's all interconnected. Just Slavic history gets a bad rap because of nationalism now, because of Soviet stuff, because of Hitler. Just
They
they
got,
take things and twist it.
the Slavic peoples have gotten screwed. They're in the middle of the Great Plain, the most desirable places. They're surrounded by all these medium-sized empires that want them, right? It's like the entire Balkan region, right? This is where we even get that word Balkanized, because like everywhere in Europe went in there and broke up all the countries, tried to divide them among as many lines as possible so that they could just exploit them. That whole entire area of Europe is depressing. Not depressing culturally, but just depressing how the rest of Europe has treated them.
Politically. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, and it's true. That's what we're trying to honor their culture and honor it as a universal culture, as part of our universal brotherhood. This is what we're all about. This is our culture, everyone's culture. So let's go to the next picture. So yeah, this is part of they had a pantheon of gods, and even at the Kievan Rus, what was it, I think Vladimir, one of the princes, had a pantheon there in a temple, and they may change names if you're in Germany or whether you're in Scythia or Bulgaria, but it's the same archetype, gods. But the reason I want to show you, because there's also a tradition of the alabastron.
Oh.
We've talked about that in the past, medicating one of these things.
Yeah, for those of you who don't remember, the alabastron is a medicated dildo that would be covered in entheogenic oils and then inserted either into the vagina or the anus.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of these medicines could not be taken other ways. You couldn't ingest it. They don't have needles to inject it, so this is how you're getting it.
Yeah, yeah. And imagine if you look into African culture, the African gods, they have Shango, Goon, different ones, and you go to Egypt has the different ones, and you go to Hindu, and they got the different ones. Here they got a whole bunch of little different ones, and each one has like a personality archetype of something in nature, anthropomorphic energy that we're ascribing to nature. But we notice there's only one female to the left.
Right.
You only get one female in the crew. That's what we were talking about earlier. The female goddesses there, and the rest are male. But they had to have one female in the crew, obviously. And so let's hit the next picture, because now we're talking about Ra, because he's one of the guys there in the picture. And that's what the modern form of Slavic paganism is called. Rodonatry, based on Rod.
Interesting.
And this is the Rod Father, the All Father. And behind him is the Radonitsky, which is 3 women.
It sounds like the Fates, doesn't it?
Yeah, they consider him the All Father. Some people, you would just change his name if you went to a different culture, but this is the All Father. This is the main dude. And so that's why they named the modern day religion after Rod.
Cool.
And you'll see him when you look it up. He's the Slavic hero. These stories. And there's also, they got a black and white god. They got a thunder god, Perun. We're showing like those different alabastrons down there, those little statues, the little phalluses. There are these different characters. They had Perun, the thunder one. They had Rod was on there. The black one, the white one, which is like yin and yang combo.
Right. No, we see so many different gods. Like I know, like Perun is really interesting because it's sort of analogous to like the thunder god, right? To Thor. And then when you look, you see this name all over Europe, because there's Perun, and then there's Perukanas in I think it's as you go further north and stuff. And then there's even, like, I know some linguists have taken some of the epithets of Thor and have connected them to Perun as well. And there's even a connection there with the mushrooms, because oftentimes, right, you have a damp area that gets struck by lightning. What's going to pop out of there? Mushrooms. And this was seen as the goddess uniting with the father god, to produce their children. This is where a lot of that speculation you get with Jesus Christ as a mushroom comes in, because there are these earlier pagan traditions that do have this kind of symbolism, that are talking about, that are encoding this kind of imagery. It's not just that imagery, but that imagery is clearly there.
Love it. Let's hit the next picture. So this is our Kona Temple. Now we're jumping over to Germany, on the coast of Germany. Like if you were to go up into the water and go up, it's not the Black Sea, but the Baltic. And on top would be Finnish. You'd have like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, which they have, their myths are all interconnected. It's all very interconnected. So this city right here, Arkona, up until the 1200s, was a pagan stronghold and would not convert to Christianity.
Wow.
And it's on an island off the coast of Germany. Was an island where they had this pagan temple that different Slavic cultures and priests would come to make tribute there. Until finally the bishops were like, they saw it like as like a, as an Artemis temple. They saw this is like, this is the Slavic stronghold. And you said up to the 1800s, they were holding out in different spots. Here, they were holding out demographically and geographically, physically, like doing the sacrifices, the rituals, the colors, while you had churches throughout Europe and bishops trying to go there to convert them at their pagan stronghold, Slavic pagan stronghold.
I think I read about this. Didn't the Christians do a crusade and burn it all down?
They tried, yeah. See, and a lot of people don't know the Crusades. A big part of the Crusades with the Teutonic Knights and all that kind of shit was originally in Germany on the Rhine River. We have Crusades, though, in Jerusalem, where they did kill a lot of Middle Eastern people, but they also did kill a lot of Europeans up and down the Germanic river system. Because the Germans did not want to convert to this shit. They're like, no. They fought hard. They fought very hard. So they had to have crusades just to convert them. It was like a literal war to the death.
When we start to look into like a lot of the conversion stuff, because I know like when you go further north to Scandinavia, it's almost entirely nonviolent. It's just a slow kind of conversion over centuries, as first the nobility, then everyone else. But in Germany, it's wildly different. Like we mentioned, we have the Teutonic Knights who actually took over this island of Arche, and they owned large parts of the Baltic Sea area until they got absorbed into Bohemia and then later became parts of Germany and other countries. But like these crusaders were going around and claiming fiefdoms for themselves in parts of Germany and parts of, Scandinavia. It's kind of intense.
Yeah. And if you'd like to see the remnant of that would be Polish culture. The Poles was see, people look at Poland now because of the war and stuff. They see it as a smaller little country. That was a thriving kingdom. They used to kick everyone's ass back in the day. The Poles was very, very tough people.
Well, and people forget that the Poles were also united with the Lithuanians. And at one point they were one grand empire. It's interesting.
People don't know about this. And so the Poles are considered at the far end of the Slav.
Right.
And a lot of this culture has just been disappeared, decimated through Soviet, through Hitler, through modern Christian culture. They all did a number on it but people are trying to bring it back. And there's even music groups. I listen to like Sarmung Ensemble, Helung. There's different groups that you can check out that do this modern pagan, what do you call it? Neo-pagan music, rock and roll.
Yeah, it's interesting because again, right, a lot of these people, we can't recreate the music directly, but they're trying to use instruments of that time, or they're taking ideas and myths and they're incorporating it into modern kind of sensibilities. I love it. It's a real amazing way to revitalize rather than, it's not toxic nostalgia. You're revitalizing, you're bringing it into modernity, you know? And this is wild. We see a lot of this paganism in, like, I was reading before coming on here that they're currently building a temple in Poland, like Catholic Poland. They're building a pagan temple. Okay. Like, that's wild. They have pagan temples in Russia, right? Orthodox, crazy. Who knows how long they'll stay now with the way things are going, but they do have some.
Oh, yeah. So let's hit the next picture. So now let's jump over to Scythia and let's talk about Amazons, which come up a lot. We talk about, because people really don't, they think this is all just the Amazons. Oh, yeah, that's just some mythology shit. Nah, these are real kick-ass women that would have killed you.
Yeah.
You know, riding up on a horse that had the word toxins comes from the bow and arrow, from the arrow poisons that they had made with snakes and dead animals and different herbs. And they were, see, people don't know in Slavic culture, men and women had sex at younger ages, and women were encouraged to learn battle. They did everything. They learned how to do everything. It was equal. It was an equal thing. And then they would go into battle equally.
And like a lot of modern anthropologists and archaeologists who are looking into these different horse cultures, especially the ancient horse cultures, what we're finding is a lot of matriarchal tribes, right? And this is a misconception that a lot of people have. It's not a human universal for women to raise the children. It's just not. In many cultures, the men raise the children, and the men take on a more feminine role, and then the women become the warriors or the hunters, right? And this is what we see with many of these different groups. Now, the Amazons specifically are special because the Greeks kind of highlight them and talk about them a lot as being the most intense version of this, right? Being a strict matriarchy. And also where these women and these men are going, at least by the Greek accounts, are transitioning. They're going through a physical biotransformation, you know, where they're ingesting these mare's milk for these women to become extraordinarily large, you know, and more masculine. And we know, like, we have archaeological evidence now where they've dug up these women. These women are buried with swords and fake beards, you know, and crowns, all of the stuff you would associate with a masculine authority, but they're women. And we find far more women, even though you see the trappings of men, or what we would assume are the trappings of men. This is why it's so interesting. And then when we find the biological male graves, these people are smaller, you know, and they're more feminine, and they've been doing the same kind of biotransformation.
Yeah, this is just unfortunately what archaeology and anthropology says.
Yeah.
Not what doctored history says. This is what the facts state. You know, and I know some of these women would cauterize one of their breasts so that they could shoot better.
Clean, right?
Yeah. This is a different culture. Nomadic and the steppes up here.
With the cauterizing of the breast, I imagine that there's a ritual function there, because we know women don't need to lop off their breasts to be good archers. Like, that's not necessary. Right. But they are doing this. Why are they doing it? It's like a symbol of strength and power or something, for sure. You know?
But it's funny. So you said symbol of strength and power. So let's hit the next picture.
All right. Go.
This is the Kona Temple, the spiral swastika. You know, and the swastika is a very touchy subject too. Trigger warning, trigger warning, swastikas. We ain't into no fascist Nazi bullshit. The swastika is an ancient Hopi, ancient symbol with the Buddhists, ancient symbol with Slavics, ancient symbol on the planet.
We were talking about near human universals, right? Earlier. This is a symbol that we see the earliest hominids carving into things. You know, this is something that stays with us cross-culturally, especially within the Indo-Aryan peoples, you know. And I know, like, in the Indian tradition, the swastika has a dual meaning. It is once the symbol of the sun, okay, but it's also the symbol of time and the transformation of the seasons. It represents the 4 quadrants and that ever-spinning circle of Dharma, the Dharma wheel, right? It's all interconnected. And I imagine we see similar stuff here in the Slavic version. I know, like on the fascist side, you see a lot of fascists even use this version now, which is sad. They call it
That's
the
what I
Black
was thinking.
Sun.
That's what I saw. Because I was
Right?
like, oh, cool, let's get these old Slavic swastikas. And then I saw modern movements, taking this stuff. And it's like, and it's just what they do. It's what fascism does, So that's why we've got to remind people that this stuff is not about that. This is universal symbols that deal with fertility, with the movements of the planets and the stars, the earth,
right?
our body,
it's a symbol
the movements of your body.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just saying,
keep going. It's
a symbol of transformation, of change, of the seasons, of the sun. Like that's natural, that's human, right? This has nothing to do with no race science or hierarchies or oppression. Like go get out of here with that crap. You know?
We ain't into that shit. That's all it is. But we know in shit, mushrooms grow. And you should take one of those little caps and maybe it'll open your mind. You might have some love for your brothers and sisters, know.
I always think about what Ammon says. Every good fascist needs the mother. The mother will set him straight. They need to, reconnect with the feminine.
You need a spanking. Your mama's got a spanking. So let's hit the next picture. Speaking of the mother, now we're going to go to the mother. So in the Nart Sagas, the word that we're going to talk about, Nart.
The Nart Sagas
and we're going to talk about them in the weekends. Really, we're going to have the experts who will break it down. But this is the mother of the Narts. This is Satanaya. Satanaya. How you pronounce that? Pronounce it for me.
Satanaya.
Satanaya.
Doesn't that sound like Satan or Satanas?
I'm gonna pronounce it like that just because I could. She was a mother figure in Slavic pantheon. Gave birth to the Narts, for these different heroes and different mythologies that we'll talk about, and different adventures that they got into.
The Nart Sagas they're later texts, but they're a compilation of myths from around the Caucasus. So even though they're more modern, they are relating much older traditions, and there's a lot of connection with the Scythians. The Nart Sagas are sort of our closest connection to them outside of what's written about by other cultures and the little bits of archaeological evidence we have.
Oh yeah. Let's hit one more picture, because it was hard to find actual things doing with Satanaya. But this is a statue in Syria, Levantine, right there next to Israel. Because there was a Circassian tribe was being genocided and took refuge down there next to in Syria and set up a Circassian stronghold, which was obviously persecuted by different folks over the years, Muslims, what have you. And they tried to go back to like a Slavic Russian area, but they had the tongue Circassian, and they made a big statue in the middle of their area for Satanaya, the fertility goddess.
That's amazing.
The Nart mother, the red and white Nart mother.
That's so cool. And you know what? I honestly believe that there is a connection. What's so wild about Syria, everyone should go out and read The Syrian Goddess by Lucan, which talks about Babylon and the cult of Kybele and this mother goddess figure that's coming out of Syria, right? It's kind of wild that these people took refuge in Syria, of all places, which is the home of the oldest traditions of the mother cult, at least in that area of the world.
And they have their statue there in town.
Love it.
And they were doing the rituals. And so now we're going to talk about, we're going to bring it home. Let's go to the next picture. We got one more picture. And wrap this up because we value your guys' time. Throughout the different parts of the year, they have different festivals. Winter festivals, summer solstice festival. They have a summer solstice festival, it's the Kupala Festival. And that's, I think, on June 24th. It's around the solstice. And they start doing these rituals. And there's movies. There's movies. You can go to like down to your Blockbuster, if they still exist, and rent you on a VHS one of these movies. No, but for reals, they got they're like Russian pagan horror movies. And you'll see people wearing robes, and they're going back to nature with the maypoles and stuff, and crazy stuff happens. And this is a source for many movies. But it's true, they have these festivals where they have orgies, and fertility rites are encouraged in nature. And they pick herbs, get drunk, and jump over the fires. You might see different images of them jumping over the fire. That's part of the Kupala Festival.
Amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I wish I could. I think one of the movies is Midsummer.
I love that movie. It's more about, it's kind of a fake cult, and it's more situated in Norway.
It's based off this.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, the imagery is there, and there's some wild stuff. At one point, they do, like, Caesar in his writings, he talks about, and a lot of people think it's all bullshit, but he talks about the blood eagle, which is something that these where they rip out your lungs and spread them like wings out of your back, and that happens in Midsummer. Bloody terrifying. Midsummer to me is probably the best movie ever to show you how fascist indoctrination works, like, and how cult indoctrination works. Like, it is terrifying.
Oh yeah, I don't even think I saw the whole thing. I just remember like going, "Oh, whoa!"
Right.
It's intense. So
and I just wanted to add one last thing. We did get a message that says that the statue you showed is actually not of Satanaya. It was actually a statue of like to educated women. But still, we're talking about the Circassian people in Syria.
No, check it out. No, I thought that too.
Okay.
Type in Satanaya on the Wikipedia, and you'll see multiple images of that statue at, where is it? Derjam, Syria. Because I was confused about that. I wanted to make sure. And that's part of the thing, is that she's a patron for women.
That's so interesting.
Because this is the mother goddess. Yeah. So type in Wikipedia. Go on there and change that.
All right. Yeah. Go edit Wikipedia, people. But yeah, that's so cool. And like, we want to also highlight with this is that what's so interesting to me about what's happening in these Slavic countries, and where all the Slavic peoples are, is this revitalization. Their culture was never eradicated, and they are bringing it back into the public, into the mainstream. And that's beautiful, I think, as long as they don't get nationalistic and racist about it.
Awesome. Well,
guys,
like, subscribe, comments, correct us on the correct statues, jump over the fire, anything. Have fun.
Exactly.
Participate.
We're just explorers. We're here to learn too. And if you guys have things to share, educate us. We want to be educated. This is what we're all about, learning and figuring this stuff out. So like Dion said, like and subscribe. And on Saturday, we're going to be doing part 2 of our deep dive into Mormonism. And then on Sunday, we're going to have the Return of Witches Symposium. And we're going to be talking about Slavic magic again, more in depth. But this time, Wretch is going to be with us. And he is an expert to a certain degree in the Nart Sagas. And we'll have Amun with us, who, as we know, is an expert in all things Scythian. So that's going to be a huge blast. So thank you guys so much. Any last words, Dion? Love it. All right, everyone. Peace, love. Hail Satan. We'll see you next time. Take care.